back to the Hungaroring here in Budapest. It is the Grand Prix 2 World Championship of 1990 in the Retro Racing Managers League, brought to you by Stopwatch Hospitality, Clapham North MOT and GoBobby.uk. I'm Jake Sanson. It's going to be a cracking Hungarian Grand Prix of 1990. After the pre-qualifying race that's just finished, we now know the identity of the three teams that are going to be taking part in the Grand Prix, along with our illustrious teams, and they are going to be Porsche, who finished third with Paul Warwick, second Monteverdi with JJ Leto, and the race one winner, of course, was Damon Hill in the Converse Dallara. But what a battle it's going to be in the Hungarian Grand Prix. It's the return of Nigel Mansell to Ferrari and also a return of Ayrton Senna to the front end of the field, but not in perhaps the order you would have originally assumed. It's Nigel Mansell who puts the Ferrari on pole position at the Hungarian Grand Prix, just a whisker in front of Ayrton Senna's McLaren. Prost in the Brabham is next up in third, ahead of Alessandro Nannini, of all people, who put a brilliant lap in the Benetton in fourth place. Then it's Thierry Boutsen ahead of Mauricio Gugelmin in the Leighton House, who did a massive power upgrade for this one. They're running in the chrome livery to celebrate the takeover bid of Honda for next year. Andrea De Cesaris in the Lotuses alongside Nelson Piquet's Benetton. Then Ivan Capelli and Riccardo Patrese. Nicola Larini and Eddie Cheever are next up in the two Ligiers. Frentzen in the Tyrrell is only 13th this time on the grid, alongside the Ferrari of Stefano Modena. The Arrows of Adrian Fernandez comes next up alongside Mika Hakkinen, really struggling in the Brabham in the wet conditions. Then Derek Warwick and Jean Alesi are next up, who's way down in 18th on the grid. Alboreto and Giovanni Aloi, who will be in his last race for McLaren. Then Damon Hill and Johnny Herbert in the two Dallaras, JJ Leto and Eric Bernard in the two Monteverdis, and Paul Warwick and Paul Tracy in the Porsches. It's a wet and greasy start once again, with the circuit in a very greasy state after the qualifying session earlier on. And it's dry running, but the circuit is definitely not dry, so it could be a fascinating race as we go on board with Alain Prost at the start of the 1990 Hungarian Grand Prix. Let's race at the Hungaroring! Terrible start for Prost. He's not got a great start at all, but Mansell in the Ferrari's got a perfect launch, and he moves up towards the first corner, no problem at all. Capelli's trying to get his way through. Lots of wheel spin off the start. Several cars in dire straits. You can see the silver chrome livery of the Leighton House there as they head to the first corner. Damon Hill's got the two Porsches to the inside line as they head through the first corner. Is everybody going to get through okay? Looks like a little bit of nudging, but I think everybody's just about got through. But it's Mansell in the Ferrari that leads the way here. There's his teammate Stefano Modena running in 14th place, losing out there to Giovanni Aloi. So a fabulous start to the race for the Ferrari of Nigel Mansell, with his teammate doing the best he possibly can out of things as the field continues on its way round. But an absolutely terrific run thus far from the Ferrari, with a lot more Nike insignia for this second half of the season. And apparently that relationship is going to continue into 1991. Nigel Mansell has on the rear wing, "Just do it." Excellent to see that Nigel Mansell is doing just that at the front end of the field here at the Hungaroring, with Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost giving chase behind. So obviously the fast cars, not necessarily the ones at the front end of the field. It's cars with mechanical grip that are doing well here so far, and the Ferrari and the McLaren, definitely two cars that have that in spades over the course of this early part of the season. Here's Andrea De Cesaris. Apparently they're going to completely rebrand for the 1991 season. The oil company Castrol is likely to become their main title sponsor for 1991, with Derek Warwick remaining on board. We don't know the identity of the second driver as yet. Here comes Senna. Senna making his bid for the lead at the 1990 Hungarian Grand Prix on only the second lap. And Senna gets through on Mansell, does he? Mansell tries to hold it round the outside in the Ferrari, and he does so. Mansell does hold it round the outside. Il Leone has returned, and in fabulous fashion as well. Mansell is back in action, and he's back at the front of a Grand Prix. So Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari leads the way here at the Hungaroring, and the work they've done to improve that car in the mid-season really has paid dividends. Mansell, of course, is still looking for his first championship points of the 1990 season, but the cars did finish second and third last time out at the Hockenheimring. So Mansell is wrestling that car to within an inch of its life, as is Ayrton Senna in the McLaren. We know that both cars are not the most powerful in the field. The Tyrrell actually is the most powerful. It has 820 brake horsepower, which means in a straight line they're pretty formidable, but mechanically, in terms of grip, the car is not that sustainable. So the Tyrrell is likely to struggle here, and certainly has done in qualifying, because they just haven't had the grip. Here's Prost in the Brabham. 2 races in the lead that have come to nothing at Silverstone and at Hockenheim. He's hoping here at the Hungaroring that the Brabham's got mechanical might behind it to get to the end of the race. It has the Honda engines, the same Honda engines as Senna. Mansell sets the fastest lap, but Senna's right on his tail. And Senna's going to try and take the lead into the first corner. Can he get there? Senna holds the inside line. Is he going to shut the door on Mansell this time? No, Mansell again drives around the outside and again holds the lead. So Nigel Mansell and Ayrton Senna are at each other's throats, battling for the victory. Now, we know that Nigel Mansell is going to be staying on with Ferrari for the 1991 season. He's put his faith in them. He's going to captain the team, and he has made it very clear he wants to be world champion for Ferrari, and he wants to be the first one to do so since Jody Scheckter in 1979. The odds are stacked against him in 1990, of course, because he has yet to score a point. It's not mathematically out of the question, but it's certainly realistically looking almost impossible for Mansell to be world champion this season. But that doesn't mean he can't set up a title attack for 1991, and he's on it. Here's Alain Prost, now settling into his new berth at Brabham, and despite the 2 retirements in the first 2 races, he has committed to them for 1991. As Warwick in the Lotus runs a little bit wide, falling off the back of Giovanni Alloy. What has happened to Derek Warwick in the middle of the season? The Lotus team have decided to re-sign him for next year, so he will stay on with the team. But it's definitely looking a little bit lackluster here at the Hungaroring, as it did mid-season. He is still in the top 4 in the Drivers' Championship, of course, after his consistency in the early part of the season. Here we go again. 3rd time lucky for Senna. He makes his bid on the inside of Mansell. He's got to brake later to stand any chance of shutting the door on Mansell in the middle of the hairpin, because again, Mansell just drives around the outside and holds on to the lead. Nigel Mansell keeps that Ferrari in the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Meanwhile, Prost is under pressure from the new boy Nannini. Well, I'm saying the new boy. He's certainly going to be the new boy at McLaren for next season. The Italian's stock has risen very high of late, and he has been confirmed as being Gerhard Berger's teammate at McLaren next year. With Senna out, Nannini's going to replace him. And to be fair, Alessandro Nannini is really starting to showcase his brilliance as a result of this new information. He's going to be a McLaren driver next year, so he wants to show them what they are missing, essentially. So now Giovanni Alloy is in his last McLaren race before Gerhard Berger returns from his 3-race ban, which he picked up at the French Grand Prix. He could lose the lead of the championship today, of course. So we're going to have to see what happens. It's all coming down to essentially how many points Riccardo Patrese is likely to score today. At the moment, neither Tyrrell is looking likely to score, which is astonishing because Frentzen and Alesi find themselves down in 16th and 12th at the moment. Frentzen 16th, Alesi in 12th place. It's a long race though, and now Senna's coming up alongside Mansell yet again. He sets the fastest lap of the race. 4th time in a row, he's gone for the move in the lead. Can he make it happen this time? Again, Mansell drives around the outside. Senna is not letting up, and Mansell is not letting him through. Brilliant racing at the front end of the grid here in the Hungarian Grand Prix. Now, we saw in the pre-qualifying race earlier that the fuel is going to be the biggest factor in this Grand Prix. Because, of course, the issue they're going to have is that several cars came very close to running out of fuel at the end of the pre-qualifying race. Now, that was only half distance. So the cars are going to be topped up to the brim to try and make a 2-stop or a 3-stop strategy work. Here's Stefano Modena. Not really coping well with the Hungaroring in the Ferrari compared to his teammate Mansell. But they did very well at the Hockenheimring, but then that circuit was all about straight lines and fast corners. But Mansell has really been able to make this place work in his favour. So there's Prost in there with Nannini. The trouble is, in terms of raw pace, you've got about 16, 17 cars in the field now, covered by about a second. So if you make one mistake in your qualifying lap, that's going to tumble you down the order. And I wonder if Frentzen and Alesi have just not been able to maximise their Tyrrells around this circuit. So Mansell has actually set the fastest lap of the race in his bid to get away from Senna. And so Senna has not had an opportunity to go for him. Here's Capelli taking on his teammate Gugelmin. And you can see the silver Hondas, as they will be called next year, because they're currently in Leighton House colours, although they've decided to celebrate the announcement of Honda returning as a works team to go all silver for this weekend. They'll go back to their normal light blue at the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa next time out. As up the inside, that's Alboreto, I think, making the bid to get past Giovanni Alloy for 18th place. And there's Prost in the Brabham. Not dominating out of the front, but this time looking like the car might have the legs to keep going to the end of the Grand Prix this time. So Alain Prost in the Brabham Honda. Still running a very solid race with the Martini stripes. There's been all sorts of rumours circulating the paddock that Brabham are going to try and make a bid to go after the Red Bull sponsorship deal that Tyrrell has for 1991. I'm not sure what Sam Hall is going to make of that, because as far as they're concerned, Red Bull are very safely locked in for 1991. So there is the Ferrari of Nigel Mansell battling away for the lead of the Grand Prix with Ayrton Senna. So far, so good. Senna's caught right up to the back bumper of Mansell this time, and he goes again. This is the 5th time he's tried to take the lead at turn 1. He sets the new fastest lap, and this time can Senna push the car a little bit earlier to the inside apex and shut the door on Mansell? No! Again, Mansell holds him at bay. Brilliant racing from these two. But Senna just can't find a way past the Ferrari of Nigel Mansell. This is a rerun of last year when Mansell and Senna were at each other's throats, although Mansell pulled off the move on Senna in one fell swoop and took the victory and ran away with it. So Mansell could put Ferrari on the winner's rostrum for the first time this year. They've had 2 podiums now, which both came at the last race at the German Grand Prix. But Mansell is returning Ferrari to their glory days up front. Brabham is 3rd with the capable Alain Prost at the helm. Nannini is 4th, then it's Patrese, Piquet, Boutsen, Capelli, Gugelmin and the leading Lotus of Andrea De Cesaris. Then Chiva, Alesi, Fernandez, Larini. Frenson's up to 15th now. He's got past Modena. And then it's Warwick, Alboreto, Aloy, Hakkinen way down in 20th. What has happened to the Brabham? Herbert is 21st from Bernard, Leto, Paul Warwick in the Porsche. Then Damon Hill, who won the pre-qualifying race, of course, in the Dallara. And Paul Tracy in the second Porsche, as Mika Hakkinen really seems to be struggling there. He's got another puff of smoke out of the car. He's actually last of the drivers in this race, would you believe, that are in the top 10 teams. So Hakkinen's really struggled since the start in the Brabham. Something is not quite going to plan, that is for sure, as Hakkinen just doesn't seem to have good balance in the car. Now I wonder if the setup has all been ploughed into Prost's car and Hakkinen has been left to stew a little bit. It's sounding very much like the kind of problems that got Prost into hot water at Ferrari initially. Now we've got a nice battle going on here as Chiva is under pressure from Alesi in the Tyrrell. Is it back to earth with a bang for the Tyrrell squad, I wonder? As they continue to challenge. But Eddie Chiva in the 11th position, Ligier, under some pressure from Alesi and Fernandez, the Mexican. It was a hot property for next year. A couple of teams already starting to be very interested in his services for next season. Prost has already re-signed with Brabham, we're told. As has Mika Hakkinen. So they've got to put on a united front at the head of the field here with the Brabham team if they want to keep this kind of form up. But Alain Prost is still running a very solid race here in 3rd position. Not pushing the Brabham too hard, but he's got good pressure from behind. That's Alessandro Nannini just popping up behind us in the Benetton. You can just about make out that there is a car right in his gearbox, and it is Nannini's Benetton. Here we go again. Senna pressuring Mansell. Down to the braking zone. Senna's got to commit late. He's got to push hard here. Mansell's going to drive around the outside. He does it again. And once more, Mansell will not concede. So Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari with its new Just Do It insignia on the car. Well, it seems as though Senna can't do it. Absolutely amazing run from Mansell so far as he holds on in front of Ayrton Senna. Meanwhile, we've got Hakkinen taking on the other McLaren. This is Giovanni Aloy losing out to Mika Hakkinen. So Aloy loses the place and Mika Hakkinen gets by. We're not quite sure whether there's any issues with Giovanni Aloy. It doesn't look like there is. He's just really struggling in this point of the race. Now, what's going to be the interesting part of the race in terms of pure strategy is who is on what strategy. Because we've obviously got cars that are on 2 stops. We've got cars that are on 3. And we know from the pre-qualifying race that these cars are running particularly thirsty here at the Hungaroring compared to normally. With the greasy conditions, it's making the cars work particularly hard. And they're running short on fuel at various points in the race. Or at least they certainly were in the pre-qualifying. I don't know if it'll be the same in the Grand Prix. But here is Prost under pressure again from Nannini. And Senna tries again on Nigel Mansell. This is the 7th attempt to make the move on Mansell. And again, Mansell just holds the car around the outside. There's good grip there for the Ferrari. But we do know that Mansell was a very epic kart racer, but then so too was Senna. So surely he should know that those tricks are not going to work on a wily old fox like Mansell, as Larini loses out to Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who now moves up into 14th place. So Larini has got through. Now we're looking back to Alesi, who has tried his best to shake off Adrian Fernandez. But Mansell in the Ferrari leads Senna in the McLaren. Here's De Cesaris in the Ligier. Oh, sorry, De Cesaris in the Lotus, I should say. He used to drive for Ligier a few years ago. But now he's in the Lotus, having joined the team as the test driver earlier in the season. And then Donnelly was dropped and sent on his way to Eurobrunn. So here, Nigel Mansell trying to hold on to the lead of the 1990 Hungarian Grand Prix in front of Ayrton Senna. Into the hairpin. And Mansell still has Senna, only a couple of tenths of a second behind him. This is a thrilling battle between the two. Mansell having got his way into the lead of the Grand Prix. But as they come off the final turn, we'll probably see Senna get up alongside us once again. Prost has got problems of his own, trying to deal with Nannini. There's Senna. Here we go again. Now, this is the 8th time of asking now. Senna trying to get past Mansell, and Mansell again just carries the speed around the outside. No way is Senna going to make the move at turn 1. And Prost does likewise with Nannini. Here's De Cesaris making his bid on Eddie Cheever. Now this time he's going to try and make a bold lunge to the inside line, and De Cesaris has a much better chance, and he makes it stick. So he's got better grip around the inside line, but the McLaren just doesn't seem to have the grunt to overhaul the Ferrari around the inside line of turn 1. And Mansell can keep the car pretty much planted around the outside line and hold on to the victory. So an absolutely fascinating dynamic at the moment here at the Hungaroring, as the race just keeps on going. For Prost in 3rd position, trying to shake off Alessandro Nannini right behind him. How frustrating must this be for the car that's following? We're on board with Nannini now. 8 laps of fuel on board, so he looks like he's on a 3-stopper, as is Prost, as are Senna and Mansell, but they are clearly wearing down the fuel a bit quicker, so this could be a fascinating Grand Prix. We're on board with Senna. There's Cheever down in 11th, and looking likely to lose ground to Alesi and Fernandez if things keep going the way they are. Team boss Dave Goddard is going to leave the Ligier team at the end of this year, and he will join the McLaren squad at the end of the season. He will start leading the team from the non-championship race, the New Zealand Grand Prix at Pukeko at the end of the season. Here's Thierry Boutsen, and up the inside that's Mauricio Gugelmin getting the move on the Williams. So is that going to be a move through? No, it's not, because Boutsen holds it round the outside. He'll have been boosted by the news that he will stay on at Williams when they take on Porsche engines next season. I wonder if the Canon sponsorship is going to remain on board. I know for a fact that it'll be a different cigarette brand that takes over the main sponsorship of the team next year. But a lot of the Williams branding is going to change for next season as Porsche decides to drop off the grid as a works manufacturer team and puts their Porsche engine into the back of the Williams for 1990, and team boss of Porsche, Scott Woodwis, will take over the mantle of the Williams team. It's an interesting new era for the team, and they've managed to coax world champion from 1988, Ayrton Senna, to join the team from McLaren. Clearly McLaren having not had a win since Monaco, and Williams having more consistency in the recent weeks. Oh, Patrese getting it slightly wrong there though at the hairpin, just in front of Nelson Piquet and Ivan Capelli. Now, what's going to happen to the services of Riccardo Patrese for 1991? That's another interesting question, because Patrese obviously was expecting to be at Williams again for 91 and is not going to happen. Here comes Piquet. He's out of a drive for next year as well. So the 3 times world champion could well find himself making a run to IndyCar, as several drivers have who have lost out on a drive in Formula 1. There's Modena battling away with Derek Warwick, who gets through on the inside line in the Lotus. So Modena decides to hang back. Now he remains in car number 7. It's Mansell who's taken over car number 8 in the Ferrari. But there is Alain Prost in car number 1, the Brabham. He was in the Ferrari earlier in the season, of course, and Boutsen making the mistake there as he tries to get back on terms with the Leighton House cars of Capelli and Gugelmin. But Boutsen making the mistake this time in the Williams. Now, a lot of people will be wondering why new Williams team boss Scott Woodward has decided to pick on Thierry Boutsen for next year rather than Riccardo Patrese, and a race like this will probably only continue those questions because Patrese is ahead of Boutsen, and the Belgian is certainly going to be an interesting one to focus on for next year with Senna alongside him as a teammate. So Mansell doing his best. That's Paul Warwick in the Porsche. Has he got a problem? Yes, gearbox. Gearbox problems in the Porsche for Paul Warwick. So I'm afraid his race is coming to an end. That is a shame because the Porsche was looking a lot stronger in pre-qualifying earlier on. But unfortunately on this occasion, the Porsche is not going to be able to make it to the end of the Grand Prix. Oh, and that's Giovanni Alloy. Giovanni Alloy in the McLaren goes off. So Warwick is out of the race on the other side of the circuit, and Giovanni Alloy has put the McLaren a little bit too far over the envelope. To be fair to the McLaren team, they had Giovanni Alloy as a test driver this year, and I don't think they ever expected to call on him to go racing next year, this season. So the fact that he even had a chance in the McLaren is kind of essentially because Berger got a 3-race ban. I don't think they ever expected to call on Giovanni Alloy for this season, but he is a contracted McLaren driver. They decided, well, they had no choice but to give him a go. They didn't want to call upon another driver. So, a fascinating scenario. Now, another interesting scenario is that from the next race of the season, from this race of the season, Stefan Johansson, who is out of contract, he's just signed for BMW, actually, for the 1991 season, because they're making a works entry into Grand Prix. So Stefan Johansson, who's joining the BMW team next year, he's out of contract and he is fit and healthy and ready to go racing again, but he is looking for a team to go racing with from the Belgian Grand Prix onwards in order to be ready and refreshed to return to BMW next season. As there's Mauricio Gugelmin getting his bid on the inside of the Williams of Patrese. They're very fast in a straight line, the Leighton House Honda, because now all of the factory efforts from Honda are going into Leighton House. A lot of people thought it would go the way of Tyrrell or Brabham, but what really interested the Honda units was the Japanese connection, obviously, to Leighton House. They've already signed 2 Japanese drivers for next season in Ukyo Katayama and Aguri Suzuki, who are both in pre-qualifying as it happens. And that's Nannini struggling. He made a mistake there, so Nannini, unfortunately, has fallen right off the back of Prost's Brabham and made a big mistake. So, Alessandro Nannini getting it slightly crossed up there, and that leaves Prost on his own in the Brabham in 3rd position. Just the one retirement thus far, and that is the Porsche of Paul Warwick, who we saw pull off the circuit a couple of laps ago with a gearbox failure. And still the battle between Mansell and Senna up front continues in the victory battle for the 1990 Hungarian Grand Prix. And yet again, Senna tries to get the move on Mansell. He gets a new fastest lap, a 1:24.4. He commits heavily to the inside line. He needs to shut the door early on Mansell, and Mansell is still there. And again, Senna has to back off. And then Gugelmin. Gugelmin getting it wrong in the final turn, and so nearly causing an accident. What happened there? So let's watch as Gugelmin locks up in the final bend, goes wide, cuts back across. Patrese goes. He turns in. Oh, so nearly a crash with Boutsen. And I'm afraid that's going to cause Gugelmin a world of pain, because there goes the Lotus of De Cesaris. There goes the Ligier of Chiva. And if he's not careful, the fast-moving Tyrrell is going to close up on him as well. Of Alesi. Oh, that's Modena. That's Modena in trouble. Engine failure. Engine failure for the Ferrari of Stefano Modena. Now, that does not bode well for race leader Nigel Mansell. But at least now we know that the Ferrari is a competitive car that could win a Grand Prix if it gets to that stage of the race. But Modena, with an engine failure, sadly out of the Hungarian Grand Prix. And that is bad news for the Italian. So he is a Ferrari driver in his 3rd season of Grand Prix racing. So for any Italian, that's obviously a big deal. But this time, he does not get a 2nd place finish in the Grand Prix. This time, he has to settle for a short walk home. Now, Alain Prost in 3rd position in the Brabham, trying to get close again to Mansell and Senna, who are still trading sector times, still trading fast laps, as Leto comes into the pits. Now, is that a scheduled pit stop? It is. So JJ Leto becomes the first scheduled pit stop of this Grand Prix. And look how little fuel he had on board. Less than a lap left. So, although this isn't a particularly significant pit stop in the outcome of the race, it does tell us a little bit about how the fuel loads are running. And Senna is due into the pits at the end of this lap, and so is Mansell. So it's going to be a race of the pit crews unless Senna can get ahead of Mansell. And this time, Senna's really trying, but Mansell again drives around the outside. And that's Häkkinen, a spin for the Brabham. So what's happened to Häkkinen? Let's have a look again. He's in there behind Alboreto, and look, he's just overshot, spun the car, hit the barrier. So Häkkinen has to spin turn the car back around and rejoin the circuit. So, terrible bad luck for Häkkinen, who's really not getting on with this Hungaroring circuit at all well. And meanwhile, Prost is coming up to lap JJ Leto, who's just had a pit stop. Capelli is in the pits in the Leighton House, which of course becomes the works Honda for next season. Jean Alesi pits in the Tyrrell, as does Frentzen and Fernandez. So that's going to be a problem. And Piquet's got a problem, but I want to see, look, Alesi, a big problem at Tyrrell. Alesi and Frentzen have come in together because they're both running out of fuel. Look at that. Alesi's in the pits at the same time as Frentzen. A miscommunication at Tyrrell. And look, Frentzen's had to wait for Fernandez. But look, they're having to double stack at Tyrrell because the fuel has drunk so quickly at Tyrrell with the Honda engines that they're having to double stack. I've never seen this before. But both cars need to come in. Meanwhile, out on track, we've got a smoking Benetton of Nelson Piquet. Piquet's in trouble. So it's all kicking off here at the Hungaroring. The Tyrrells are double stacking. And it's an engine failure for Nelson Piquet in the Benetton. So he's not going to go the distance, I'm afraid. So the 3 times world champion, the man who won the title in 1981, 83 and 87, is going to pull off the road. But Piquet is still going. And this cannot be good news for Boutsen. Look, he's got a face full of smoke at the moment. Oh, and the car's on fire for Piquet. The car is absolutely ablaze for Nelson Piquet now. So Boutsen finally gets through, but Piquet should really be parking that car. Oh, this is terrible for De Cesaris, who's got a face full of flames again. And Eddie Cheever's got to try and come up to Piquet's car as well. Gugelmin's there too. And there goes Piquet parking the car, but that's very poor form from those guys. As into the pits comes Mansell and Senna. And look, Mansell gets out just in front of Ayrton Senna. So the race of the pit crews is very close indeed, as Prost in the Brabham pits, Patrese in the Williams pits as well. But Mansell rejoins, and where does he rejoin? He rejoins behind this mass queue of cars of Gugelmin, Cheever and then Mansell. So we've got De Cesaris third, Gugelmin fourth, Cheever fifth, but they're on fresh tyres, Mansell and Senna. But crucially, they are now in traffic. So Boutsen is 20 seconds back from Alessandro Nannini. What a thrilling encounter this is, but it's terrible news at Tyrrell because they've had to double stack, which has really cost Frentzen. There goes Prost, I think, up the inside of Alesi. Oh no, it's Häkkinen, sorry. Häkkinen gets through past Alesi, and Alboreto makes his pit stop. Here's Frentzen getting back on terms with Derek Warwick and blasting through on horsepower. But he can't make the move finish up, so he can't finish the move. There's Nannini, 13 seconds ahead of Boutsen. Look how far the fuel tank goes. He's literally on fumes as he comes into the pits. Now this could be very dramatic for those on a 3-stop strategy. If the fuel is actually drinking faster than they thought it would, then we could see a few cars run out of fuel here. Here's Leto getting a move on Damon Hill. So this is the race resuming from pre-qualifying, isn't it? Leto getting the move on Damon Hill and gets through into the position. But it's Thierry Boutsen in the Williams that leads the race, and he's going a bit further into the race than his compatriots. So he might be on a 2-stop strategy here in the Williams. So Boutsen looking like he could be on course for a fast move here. Cheever is into the pits, as is the race leader, as we know, Alessandro Nannini. So Gugelmin now second in the chrome and blue Leighton House. There's Capelli getting through on the straight past Patrese by the look of it. So Patrese is going to lose out. Now it's clear to see who's getting the best engines at Honda, isn't it? It's definitely not Williams, because they've announced they're going to be going to Porsche engines for 1991. So Honda is putting all of their resources, it seems, into the Leighton House crew, which is going to be an all-Japanese outfit for next year, although there is still a rumour going around that Mauricio Gugelmin will be retained by the team for 1991. So it's likely that we'll see the likes of Gugelmin and Suzuki in the car, with Katayama as team test driver. And then maybe one other Japanese driver will join the team as their development driver with a program in Formula 3000. That's the other thing we need to announce for 1991, is that there is going to be some Formula 3000 coverage on the channel as we watch the young drivers make their way through the field of Grand Prix racing. So they will run together and have a very exciting time. But there is Thierry Boutsen on a 2-stop strategy with the other big names in the field running on 3 stoppers. Oh, and Alboreto! Oh, Michele Alboreto getting it very crossed up in front of Giovanni Aloy. Hits the wall trying to recover. And the yellow flags are out there on the far side of the circuit. So obviously they've got to be very careful about making an overtaking move. It's only Hakkinen going through. And the Porsche of Paul Tracy. Johnny Herbert's Dallara gets through as well. But Michele Alboreto, I think, has got to wait now for the rest of the field to go by before rejoining. Yellow flags are still out on circuit as the Monteverdi and the Dallara go through of Leto and Damon Hill. There's the race leader, Thierry Boutsen, going by. And then second, Gugelmin. Third, De Cesaris. Fourth, Mansell. Fifth, Senna. This is embarrassing for Michele Alboreto, who was trying to get into a Ferrari seat a few races ago. But this could spell the end of the Italian's illustrious career. 2 seasons ago, he was second at the Italian Grand Prix at Monza for Ferrari. But he just doesn't seem to be clicking with Formula 1 in 1990. And certainly, Formula 1 doesn't seem to be clicking well with him at the moment, the way he's been making a lot of mistakes of late. But Boutsen leads the Hungarian Grand Prix of 1990. He still has to pit, though. Here's Damon Hill making another bid to come back on JJ Leto. As Senna passes De Cesaris. Is De Cesaris in the pits? Yes, he is. So again, the Lotus runs very heavy on fuel, but runs out of fuel practically before his next pit stop. So this could be a 2-stopper, or it could be a very late 3-stopper for Andrea De Cesaris. 9.3 seconds in the pits. And Boutsen is coming into the pits on this lap. So Boutsen is actually setting personal best sectors. So Boutsen is due into the pits. So maybe it is a 3-stop strategy for Boutsen after all. But it's just a very late one by comparison. Gugelmin in second place, Mansell in third in the Ferrari, and in fourth place is Ayrton Senna, who's still trying to gain ground on Mansell. But the Ferrari running well in third position, although technically, of course, it is still net first, because both Boutsen and Gugelmin need to pit, and they are going to pit. Boutsen is pitting on this lap. Boutsen nearly going off the road there in his bid to lap Damon Hill. Gugelmin is in on this lap as well, so both the leaders are due into the pit lane now. And Boutsen actually has a little bit more fuel at his disposal, so have Williams pulled a bit of a fast one here. They're coming into the pits now as Thierry Boutsen pits in from the lead of the Grand Prix, and that puts Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari back into the lead of the 1990 Hungarian Grand Prix ahead of Ayrton Senna. Now, who's going to be third? Because the Rini is currently in P5. I think he's still out on track, you know. Boutsen is in the pits in the Williams. Here he is. And Larini does indeed go past the pits, so he looks like he could be on a 2-stop strategy in the Ligier, running in third at the moment. Good stop from Boutsen this. 9.2 seconds, about the same as we've seen from the others in the field. Where's Larini? There he is. So Larini does look like he's on a 2-stop strategy in the Ligier, running a lot deeper into the race than the others. But we've seen how Larini can make tyres and fuel last, so Larini, a pretty solid character for 1991, and a lot of people would have their eye on him. All sorts of rumours circulating where he's going to be racing in 1991. We've just heard that Ferrari are not only confirming Nigel Mansell, but they've actually signed up young Michael Schumacher to their team for next year. They've clearly seen something in the young German, and that's going to be a killer lineup for 1991. He actually turned down a Sauber Mercedes lead driver contract after his time in Le Mans this year. But Michael Schumacher is going to join the Ferrari team for 1991. Big, big moment for the young German's career, as Ayrton Senna continues his run at the second place run of the field in the number 27. Essentially, the Ferrari and McLaren cars have swapped numbers over the course of the season, but it's been long drawn out, because McLaren started the year as 27 and 28 with Ferrari 1 and 2, but then when Prost joined the Brabham team, they got their numbers, and so Brabham gave their numbers to Ferrari. That sounds more complicated than it is, but I'm sure it makes sense to someone who's paying attention. Larini in third place in the Ligier, running a solid 2-stop race here. Prost in fourth, Nannini is fifth, then the 2 Williams cars of Boutsen and Patrese. In fact, they're racing each other, as Patrese is trying to show the Formula 1 world, I still need a race drive in 91, by the way. And Williams were fools. They signed Boutsen for next year. I'm better than him, that's the message. So Mansell takes on the back markers and actually puts Damon Hill between himself and Ayrton Senna. Here's Frentzen having a torrid race by his standards, down in 14th place as he makes the move on Derek Warwick. So Frentzen gets through, but Warwick around the outside. That Tyrrell is great in a straight line and on fast circuits such as Paul Ricard, Silverstone and Hockenheim. But they have really struggled on tight and twisty circuits like this one. Great car in a straight line, not so great everywhere else. So there is Larini, third position. And JJ Leto trying to get out of the way of Nigel Mansell. Is that... I thought for a moment that was Senna in front of Mansell, but it's not. It's Senna's teammate, Giovanni Aloy, who runs down in 20th in this race. The Mexican, who will be handing his car back to Gerhard Berger at the next race in Belgium. Although, of course, technically the next race is the Birmingham Super Prix, which the pre-qualifying teams have been given leave to attend. And then the Race of Champions later this year will have all teams allowed a chance to go to it. Certainly the top 10 teams will be there. And then it will be drawn out of a hat, I believe, as to which 3 teams will join them on the grid at the Race of Champions. So Nicola Larini runs in third position in the Ligier. Senna trying to work his way through the traffic, but they're not making it very easy for the Brazilian. This is excellent news for Nigel Mansell. Senna pops out, dives up the inside of JJ Leto's Monteverde, and Leto, a rather rude awakening, and Larini goes into him. Larini nudges the back of his car, and that's given Prost a bit of an opportunity. Now, I'm not sure anything's going to be said about that one. That could just be down to a racing incident. But Larini very nearly collided with the Monteverde there. The Monteverde was being lapped by Senna, and that could have been very nasty indeed. But Mansell is still going through traffic. Now he's going past Eric Bernard in the other Monteverde, but he's done it with 2.5 seconds in hand over Ayrton Senna's McLaren, who has lapped his teammate now, Giovanni Aloy. There's De Cesaris battling away with Mauricio Gugelmin, but he's got a problem. He's losing ground by the look of it to Eddie Cheever. It's because he's on a heavier fuel load, that's why. So De Cesaris is going a lot longer into the race this time round than he did in the previous stint. So here's Alboreto, about to be lapped by the Williams of Riccardo Patrese. Not good news for Alboreto, certainly not where he was hoping his Grand Prix would be run. And yet again, it's the young Mexican Adrian Fernandez, his teammate, who is clearly upstaging Michele Alboreto, former Grand Prix winner. So here's Giovanni Aloy, the Mexican, the other Mexican in this race. Oh, there's Alboreto, and he's done it again. This time he's really damaged the car. So Alboreto, I'm afraid, has gone clean off the circuit at turn 3. And that is yet another incident in his character-building season with the Arrows team, which I'm being told is actually going to be rebadged as the Footwork team for next season. There go Frentzen and... that was Frentzen and Derek Warwick going past, as Alboreto gets himself back on track, but he will revert back to the pits. And Alboreto, I'm afraid to say, is having a miserable Grand Prix here at the Hungaroring, as we watch Ayrton Senna, who's back in the groove again. Second place on the road last time out at Hockenheim, certainly giving McLaren plenty to shout about. And they're here again at the Hungaroring, hoping to keep it going, as into the pits comes Larini for his first of 2 stops. Again, running the fuel tank pretty much dry. But he carries on with another 28 laps of fuel going in. There could be some splash and dash pit stops in the Grand Prix as well, by the look of it. As round the outside, Nannini goes past Damon Hill and will now take on Giovanni Aloy, as Nannini gets back up into 4th position thanks to Larini's pit stop. So Senna is 2 seconds back from Nigel Mansell. Easy to gain, but easy to let the gap open up again. Now we know that Ayrton Senna is in his final season for McLaren before he joins forces with the new Williams Porsche team, as Nannini gets his move up the inside of the other McLaren of Giovanni Aloy. And was there an incident there with Aloy and Damon Hill? I want to see that one again, because it looked as though Aloy had a similar problem there. Let's watch as Aloy runs wide. Damon Hill, just avoided him. But Aloy essentially came back onto the race circuit to block Damon Hill's path. And that's why there was contact there between Leto and third place man Larini. But there was no damage to Larini's car, so I guess that's why there's no penalty. It's just noted as a racing incident. Nobody under investigation in the Grand Prix just yet. And we're just coming up to 1/3 distance. Lap 27 of 77. So 51 laps remaining in the Hungarian Grand Prix. 26 laps completed as Nigel Mansell continues to run in the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. So we are bang on 1/3 distance, I do believe. As Damon Hill now gets on the inside of Giovanni Aloi. Well, Damon Hill clearly doing a better job than the McLaren, which is very good news for him. That puts Damon Hill on the radar for several teams. He won the pre-qualifying race earlier, don't forget. So clearly, he gels well with the Hungaroring. Good ability for Damon Hill today. Showing that same class and style that his father, I should say, showed. There's Ayrton Senna closing up on Nigel Mansell. 2 seconds ahead of him at the moment. Trading sector times, those two. Mansell in the Ferrari, Senna in the McLaren. Mansell set to stay with the Ferrari team for 1991. Senna onto the Williams team. But will that Porsche engine be reliable enough? At the moment, the Williams is clearly outpacing the Porsche. But they're going to do some development work. They're putting an awful lot of research and R&D into the engines for 1991 Porsche. They want to mount a title attack, and they felt they could do it with a big team like Williams, not as an independent manufacturer. And of course, it's not the first time that Porsche have gone racing at that level. They obviously had tag Porsche engines with McLaren in the 80s, and they were world champions together, so Porsche know how to build a Grand Prix winning engine. It's a different formula since then, of course. It's changed a few times, but Porsche definitely seem to have something going for them in 1990. They've got into pre-qualifying 3 times into the Grand Prix. As Capelli goes past one of the Porsches, that's Paul Tracy, the sole remaining Porsche in the race. But Mansell leads Senna. The gap is down to 1.6 though, so Senna is chipping away at Mansell's advantage, and Gugelmin locks up at the first corner. And he is lucky there to keep going, though Chiva did get past him. So Chiva's through into 8th, and De Cesaris nearly through into 9th place past Gugelmin, so big mistake for the Brazilian. And for Ivan Capelli, who is 3 places ahead of the Brazilian, it's an interesting note for the race, because Ivan Capelli is actually doing a far better job at the moment than Mauricio Gugelmin. There's Alboreto being lapped again by the Brabham as Johnny Herbert continues on his way round. So Johnny Herbert doing a fair job at this moment in time as he comes through the hairpin on the far side of the circuit. And now we've got some pretty exciting stuff to come as Senna pulls clear, but he's lost ground to Mansell. So he clearly got held up there by the Dallara Converse of Johnny Herbert. And that's Paul Tracy. Whoops, mistake there for the Porsche driver. Celebrating this second half of the season and their tie-in with Williams with a slightly Williams-based livery is what the official press statement is. The car does look pretty encouraging for 1991, although of course this is going to be the last 6 or 7 races for the Porsche team. They will finish the season at the Australian Grand Prix at Adelaide, and they will finish their rather short-lived return to Grand Prix racing as a works manufacturer. But here's De Cesaris up on the inside line of Gugelmin to move up into 9th place, and he does get the move done. See Ayrton, that's how you overtake at turn 1. Very surprising that Mansell was able to stay in front of Senna for all of those occasions, but Mansell clearly finding more grip with the Ferrari around the outside line and holding on to that outside line as well. He wasn't going to give Senna a chance to run around the outside when he was finding good grip there. There's Prost running in 3rd place in the Brabham. He's slipped 10 seconds back from Mansell and Senna. Again, this car is good in a straight line, but struggles a bit in mechanical grip around at various points on the circuit. But Prost and Häkkinen have committed to 1991 with Brabham. So it looks as though the team could have another strong showing in Martini colours next season. Here's Senna. 2nd position at the moment. 2.8 seconds back from Nigel Mansell. Great to see the Brabham glory days have returned. And here's Patrese up on the inside of Giovanni Aloi to lap him. The McLaren gets out of the way. These will be the last few laps of Giovanni Aloi's Grand Prix career for the moment, because obviously Gerhard Berger will take that car back at the Belgian Grand Prix, I'm sure. Here's Giovanni Aloi, though, trying to unlap himself from Patrese. Bit of an awkward moment, but Giovanni Aloi stays in the tail end of the field and gets out of Patrese's way as Senna tries to pick up the pace in the McLaren. Can't be too long for the three stoppers to make another pit stop. Indeed it is not. Look, Senna's only got 7 laps of fuel on board the car. Mansell has 8. So they tried to underfuel Senna a little bit less than Mansell in the hope that Senna could catch and pass the Ferrari, but it hasn't quite worked out. So now they've got to go for an undercut at the second pit stop. By the time they get to the third pit stop, it's got to be a strategy that works out as Herbert holds up Alain Prost there a little bit. But there are no rules to suggest that you've got to get out of the way. There are no flags to wave a slower car out of the way. So Prost is still doing his best here in front of the field. But there is Senna running in second place in the McLaren, still going strong here as Johnny Herbert finally gets out of the way and lets Alain Prost go on the main straight. Great racing so far, just 3 retirements, Piquet in the Benetton, Modena in the Ferrari and Paul Warwick in the Porsche. As Ayrton Senna in his McLaren runs in second position for the moment, in behind Nigel Mansell. Gerhard Berger is sat in the pit lane watching this on. This will give him plenty of encouragement heading to the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, because obviously he is still in a car that is fighting for the Constructors' Championship. In fact, looking at the fact that Tyrrell are 11th and 14th in this race, it looks as though they're going to score no points. So McLaren in second could retake the lead of the Constructors' Championship with this performance. As Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari shows us what we've been missing for the last 3 races. He had that accident, of course, at the Mexican Grand Prix and damaged his foot. Damaged his back as well, I believe. As there is the Monteverdi getting out of the way for Patrese. And Eric Bernard is now under pressure from Damon Hill in the Dallara to try and move up through the field. So the battle is very intense indeed as the competitors continue on their way forward. Here's Mansell in the Ferrari, still leading the Hungarian Grand Prix. Out in front of Ayrton Senna. Here's Boutsen, P7 in the Williams, trying to get away from Eddie Cheever's Ligier. It's been a good race for the smaller teams, hasn't it? Ligier going well with Cheever and Larini in the early stages. Capelli and Gugelmin are both in the points for the Leighton House squad. Nannini's going well in the sole remaining Benetton. Prost is going well in what is effectively the sole remaining Brabham, because Mika Hakkinen has had a horrible day at the office. He's down in 16th at the moment. Interestingly, the 2 cars that are down and out of things at the moment from the top 10 teams are Giovanni Alloy's McLaren and Michele Alboreto in the Arrows. 2 drivers who are having absolutely horrible days at the office, although Giovanni Alloy was really exposed here. Silverstone and Hockenheim are straight line circuits, so you can really have a bit of fun on the throttle. But here at the Hungarian Grand Prix, this man's slight deficiencies compared to other drivers in the field is very much exposed. But Alesi and Fredson made good advantage of the horsepower of the Honda engine in the last 4 races at Mexico. Paul Ricard, Silverstone and Hockenheim. But here at the Hungaroring, they did say at the end of the German Grand Prix they were not expecting much from the Hungarian Grand Prix. They did feel that the car was going to struggle on the technical circuits this year. But next up is Spa, so that should give Tyrrell plenty to be confident about again. But this is a very tricky circuit to get right. It's the teams that have built a good mechanical car with good grip that are going to have the benefit, which is why Ferrari, McLaren, Brabham, Benetton and Williams are the top 5 teams in the race at the moment. 6th is the Leighton House, which is back on terms once again. Here's Prost. The Brabham's still going well, and he's certainly going a lot further into the race than he has done on previous occasions. But the best 3 drivers in the sport are in the best 3 positions. Mansell, Senna and Prost. Here's Alesi trying to get Tyrrell into the points with a move on Mauricio Gugelmin, and there he goes. So Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell gets back through and up into 10th position. He's staying on with the Tyrrell team for 1991 as they try and mount a title attack on the remainder of this season. They are leading the Constructors' Championship, but not so likely to score a single championship point this time, other than Alesi in 10th place. So Mansell in the Ferrari leads. Senna's McLaren is second. Prost in the Brabham is third. From the Nini's Benetton in 4th place. Then it's the Williams of Riccardo Patrese ahead of the Leighton House of Ivan Capelli. 7th is Thierry Boutsen's Williams. 8th is Eddie Cheever's Ligier. 9th is Andrea De Cesaris in the Lotus. And 10th place is Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell. Which means that in the top 10, we have 9 different teams. That's incredibly competitive stuff. And great to see so many teams running cars in the top 10. Gujamin is 11th in the Leighton House. 12th is Fernandez in the leading Arrows. 13th is Frentzen in the second Tyrrell. Warwick's Lotus is down in 14th. So yet again, De Cesaris seems to be getting the best of it as Capelli laps a slower car. That is Leto's Monteverde. Larini is 15th, although he's on a completely different strategy to everybody else, so he could still make the points yet. 16th place is Hakkinen in the Brabham, who's had a terrible day at the office by his brilliant standards. Herbert is 17th, the fastest of the pre-qualifiers at the moment. Leto is 18th, Hill is 19th, Bernard is 20th, Giovanni Aloy in the McLaren is 21st for the Mexican. Paul Tracy in the sole remaining Porsche is 22nd, and Alboreto in the Arrows is 2 laps down in 23rd position. The only retirements are Piquet's Benetton, Modena's Ferrari, and Paul Warwick in the Porsche. As Eddie Cheever laps Damon Hill in the Dallara. The 1990 Hungarian Grand Prix going without a hitch for Nigel Mansell up in front. Here he is, but Senna is catching him. The gap is down to 1.4 as Fernandez gets on the inside to lap the McLaren of Giovanni Aloy, who is set to be starting his last Grand Prix for a while. Andrea De Cesaris running well in 9th place. There was a rumour linking both Adrian Fernandez and Giovanni Aloy to the Lamborghini project next season, because there is a Mexican consortium trying to buy into the Lamborghini team known as Glass. But Lamborghini has made it pretty clear that they would like to run as a works entrant in 1991. In the same vein as Porsche had this year, in the same vein that Honda and BMW will do next season. They like the new format of Grand Prix racing. They feel they've got a good chance of getting into Grand Prix races in 1991. So Lamborghini want a factory effort, not a small-time team to push them into the sport. But they could still take some customers for next year. Heavily rumoured that Ligier and Lotus could be on the hunt for a new engine supplier for 1991. Brabham is set for a switch as well, with Honda not choosing them as a works outfit, but deciding to go it alone. So there could be some customer teams for Honda, but it looks like Brabham might not be one of those. McLaren could still be, and Tyrrell certainly could still be as well. But Honda's works outfit will be in pre-qualifying next year, so they're fully aware of the fact that their engine supply of the top teams could actually outrank the works team, but this is a long-term project for Honda. And they feel that, as Porsche have shown, they still have plenty that they can demonstrate. Here's Alboreto getting an overtaking move, but it doesn't improve his position. He unlaps himself from Johnny Herbert. Oh, that's Prost slowing. Prost is slowing yet again. Gearbox failure in the Brabham. And once more, Alain Prost will not finish a Grand Prix in 1990. Absolutely devastating for Alain Prost. He's had absolutely no luck at all this year. And the reigning world champion sees yet another race disappear from underneath him as Jean Alesi makes his pit stop from what was 10th position. It's now effectively 9th. As Senna nearly trips over Hakkinen's Brabham there. So Ayrton Senna so nearly loses ground as Mansell is going to come in the Ferrari. Here we go. So Nigel Mansell comes into the pits in the Ferrari from the lead, and Senna should take the lead of the Grand Prix away from him as he goes past the pits. So Ayrton Senna will lead the Grand Prix. Or will he actually? Because no, Senna's pitting as well. So Mansell and the Ferrari pits from the lead. And the Ferrari pit crew go to work. This is the second pit stop of 3 for the Ferrari team. 9.2 seconds. Where is the McLaren in relation to the Ferrari? The McLaren team were actually faster than Ferrari in the pits there, as Nannini comes in from 3rd position as well. So the race leader is going to continue to be Mansell, ahead of Senna and Nannini, because Capelli has not come past the pits. Mansell rejoins with Alboreto alongside him, and that's Boutsen getting it wrong. Oh, Thierry Boutsen spins at the final turn. Wow, that is devastating bad luck for Thierry Boutsen. What happened? It just looked as though he got it slightly wrong in the final turn. Yes, he did. He just spun the car. I think he just hit a damp patch, essentially, and spun the Williams. That's a rather precarious position to have spun the Williams as well, just on the final bend. So Boutsen is going to tumble down the order in the Williams. That's great news for Tyrrell, because Frentzen has now gone up into the top 10. Although I believe he is coming into the pits now, Frentzen. But Alesi should overtake him as well, having just made his pit stop. Yellow flags are still out on the final bend. There is a Lacey, having just made his pit stop, but Boutsen, I think, still needs to make his, so that's doubly devastating for the Williams. But Mansell and Senna rejoin, and Nigel Mansell is about to lap Michele Alboreto, who has unlapped himself, actually. Is that a problem for the Ferrari incoming? No, it's just that Alboreto has only got 1 lap of fuel in the car. So that's where the discrepancy has come in. But Nigel Mansell goes past the pits as Alboreto dives for them. But Alain Prost walks away from the 1990 Hungarian Grand Prix with his tail firmly between his legs as he retires yet again from a Grand Prix in 1990. Alain Prost cannot believe his luck. He had a horrible start to the year at Ferrari. He's having a terrible middle part of the season at Brabham. Well, Ayrton Senna running in second place now, as he runs there in behind Nigel Mansell. So Senna is trying to close up on Mansell in the second half of his Formula 1 season. He still believes there's an outside chance he could be world champion this year. He won at Monaco, so he feels that if he can get some races together and get some wins in the bag, it might still be possible. So Ayrton Senna has not given up on his dreams of the championship. Here's Gugelmin trying to close up on Alboreto. And to be fair, the championship leader Gerhard Berger has not yet been overtaken in the Drivers' Championship, as Mansell gets it slightly crossed up there. Gets it back together, but that's definitely given Senna a little bit of momentum. So Mansell has made a big mistake coming out of, I think that was turn 8 that he got it wrong. And now Ayrton Senna is all over the back of him. Has Mansell got a problem, or did he just overcook it? Yeah, he just overcooked it, or certainly there's no problem coming up for Mansell. He just made a mistake, and this is Senna's chance now, and he knows it. So Senna has got a real chance to get on terms with Mansell. Driving error from the Ferrari driver. Senna's got him on the slipstream, and is this going to be the move from Ayrton Senna into the first corner? He's tried it so many times in this Grand Prix, and it hasn't happened, but this time Senna's going to commit to the inside line, and this time he does it. Ayrton Senna takes the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Brilliant move for Senna. And finally, the McLaren hits the front on merit as Mansell makes a mistake and the Ferrari loses the lead of the 1990 Hungarian Grand Prix to Ayrton Senna. So Fernandez runs in 11th now in the Arrows, ahead of Alesi and Frentzen, the two Tyrrells, who are still needing to make one more pit stop, I think. But there is Senna now in front of Mansell. Mansell's coming back at him by the look of it, as Capelli, who is running in 7th behind Larini, makes a move on one of the slower cars to lap them. Larini in the Ligier has climbed his way up into P6 after his earlier trip to the pits. There is Alessandro Nannini in the Benetton, running in 3rd place ahead of the Cesaris. Here's Häkkinen. Häkkinen makes his bid on Frentzen into the first corner. 2 race winners this year, and they are battling over 13th. Such is the close nature of the Formula 1 scene in 1990 in the Grand Prix 2 World Championship on the Retro Racing Managers League, here on the Downforce channel. So Senna leads Mansell by less than half a second. Nannini is 3rd in the Benetton from the Cesaris in the Lotus, Gugelmin in the Leighton House, then Larini in the Ligier, this man, Ivan Capelli, in the 2nd Chrome Leighton House, and then behind is the Williams of Riccardo Patrese, although they have a slower car behind them as well in the form of Eric Bernard in the Monteverdi. 9th is Eddie Cheever in the 2nd Ligier. 10th is Thierry Boutsen after his spin in the Williams. And then 11th place is Adrian Fernandez. 12th is Alesi in the Tyrrell. 13th is Häkkinen's Brabham. 14th is Frentzen in the Tyrrell. 15th is Derek Warwick in the Lotus. But then this is Senna and Mansell. It looks as though the changing of the guard that happened in the first half of the season is definitely back to the way it used to be, with Senna and Mansell back at the front. Prost was with them, but a gearbox failure again in that Brabham. I wonder if they're not getting to grips with the Honda. That's the biggest problem they've had. They've had one race win for Häkkinen at Imola, but otherwise it's been very much a difficult season for Brabham. They've had speed but not reliability. Here's Mansell, tucked up behind Senna. 1 lap of fuel distance between them, but Mansell has got frustration and the red mist having come down on him. So McLaren versus Ferrari, Senna versus Mansell. And Mansell's got a fast car in a straight line, we do know that. So Senna's going to be a sitting duck here on the main straight. as Mansell makes his bid to take the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix back again from Ayrton Senna. Thank you very much. On the inside, can he hold it? Yes, he does. Mansell retakes the lead here at the Hungaroring. So Ferrari are back in front, and all that hard work from Senna has just been completely undone. It took him so long to get through, and now Mansell has retaken the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Nannini versus De Cesaris for the final spot on the podium. Benetton versus Lotus. And that is a genuine fight because the Brabham of Prost is now out of the race. It does seem as though Häkkinen can make that Brabham go a little further into the race than Prost. Prost perhaps being a little too aggressive with that car still, because Häkkinen always seems to go further into the Grand Prix than Prost does. Fernandez, 11th position at the moment, as into the pits comes Chiva, I believe. Oh no, sorry, it's a move from Boutsen. So Boutsen overtakes Chiva for 9th position. And Senna is getting back on terms with Mansell once again. Häkkinen makes the bid for Alesi. So Häkkinen in the Brabham gets past Jean Alesi's Tyrrell. But the team have obviously re-signed Alesi and Frentzen for next year, so they can thank their lucky stars. They've got those two drivers ready for another crack at the world title next year, because hopefully this is just a one-off for them, and at Spa and Monza they can return to their best. Here's Mansell and Senna. Senna on the inside, Mansell around the outside. Mansell commits the car to the outside line, but Senna's got him. He's learnt this time, and Senna takes back the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. A brilliant duel for victory between these two. We genuinely don't know which of these two legendary racers is going to win the Hungarian Grand Prix. They're both giving as good as they've got. Mansell has a look. Senna holds him at bay. Oh, that's Chiva. Chiva's got an electrical failure. And surely that's him out of the race. What a shame for the Ligier team, as Eddie Chiva retires from the Hungarian Grand Prix. And that promotes the arrows of Adrian Fernandez into the points in 10th position ahead of Häkkinen, Alesi and Frentzen. So the American Eddie Chiva, another driver who may well be calling time on his fledgling Grand Prix career. That's Capelli. Capelli's slowing. He's got a suspension failure. You can see there on the right front. So Capelli out of the race on the same breath as Eddie Chiva. So Capelli and Chiva now out of the race. What a shame for Ivan Capelli. He was having a great race up until that point. Firmly in the top 10. Was as high as 5th at one stage. So Fernandez is now into 9th, and Häkkinen is back into the points in 10th place, with the Tyrrells now 11th and 12th. So they could get some points on the board after all. Here's Senna. Mansell's having another go. Up to the first corner. Diving for the inside line. Mansell holds the inside. Senna drives around the outside, but Mansell takes back the lead. And yet again, for the third lap running, Mansell and Senna swap the lead. This is an amazing Grand Prix up front. De Cesaris is third in the Lotus. He's got past Alessandro Nannini, and Fernandez is about to lose out to Alesi, I think. Oof. Well, Alesi tried to get past the Mexican, but he can't quite make it stick. Meanwhile, Mansell... Oh, look, Mansell's lapped Tracy, and that's held up Senna. Now, this is crucial. Mansell made the bold move. Look at this. Round the outside. Tracy didn't know what hit him, and Senna's got nothing he can do about it. He just had to hang back and get stuck in there behind Tracy. I want to see a replay. Look, Mansell seemed to get a great run out of the turn. And this is him going round the outside of Tracy's Porsche. Senna has to hesitate. And that's enough for Mansell to get a clean pass through for the lead. So, fabulous news for Mansell, because he's now got a bit of a gap between himself and Ayrton Senna, who finally now gets past the Porsche. He's got to be gentle to it, because that engine is going to be in the back of his car for 1991 when he joins Williams. So De Cesaris in third. Alessandro Nannini is fourth. Gugelmin is in fifth. Larini in sixth from Patrese, Boutsen, Häkkinen and Fernandez. And then we have Jean Alesi in front of Heinz-Harald Frentzen. The two Tyrrells are a minute off the lead. That shows you the difference between one race circuit in Formula One and another, because it really is quite a shocking difference between the two circuits, how Tyrrell have performed here compared to how they performed at the last few races. So Mansell has scampered away to the tune of 2 seconds ahead of Senna now. So that has diffused the leading battle somewhat. Mansell goes off! Mansell goes off at turn 1! I don't believe it! Let's look again and see what happened. But it just looked to me as though Mansell pushed too hard into turn 1 and locked up the car. Here he goes. He just goes too deep. He hits the wet patch, skates off, and Nigel Mansell throws away the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Disastrous for Nigel Mansell and Ferrari. This race was his. He had a lead over Senna. And now he's fighting just to get out of the gravel trap. He strikes the barrier on the outside. De Cesaris is in the pits. Is Mansell going to be able to get out of there? He's got to fight to get back into the race. Nannini's through into second. He reverses the Ferrari through the gravel trap. That's perfectly legal because he hasn't got outside assistance from anyone. But Nigel Mansell has thrown away victory in the Hungarian Grand Prix. This is devastating. So Senna is now firmly in the lead in the McLaren, and I think Mansell is stuck in the gravel trap. He is trying his best to get going again. But Nigel Mansell, from the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix of 1990, has thrown it all away. He finally gets the car moving. Yellow flags at the first corner, so nobody should be attempting an overtake. But the Tyrrells are now through into the points. Alesi and Frentzen. Mansell is down to 11th, make that 12th now. But Mansell is trying to get that car back into the race as Häkkinen pits in from 13th. So Mansell tries his best. Come on, Nigel. Don't give up. You never know what can happen. He could still get some points for Ferrari. But Mansell has got it very, very wrong. And there is Ayrton Senna coming into view. Watch for him on the main straight now as he tries to get back into the race. Mansell and Ayrton Senna is surely going to pass. Oh, and Mansell has spun the car in his attempts to get back into the race. So Senna has lapped him. But Mansell now finds himself facing the wrong way at turn 1. He recovers. Or does he? Mansell is really struggling to get that Ferrari moving. He reverses back onto the circuit, gets going again. And Nigel Mansell recovers, but he's in 13th and a lap down. So embarrassing for Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari, leading comfortably here at the Hungarian Grand Prix. And that means that Nannini is in second place now, 20 seconds back from Senna, who leads the way comfortably now himself here at Budapest. Gugelmin is third, Larini is fourth, Patrese is fifth from Boutsen, De Cesaris, Fernandez, and the two Tyrrells of Alesi and Frentzen. 44 laps done. 33 to go. Still plenty that can happen in this Hungarian Grand Prix, but for Nigel Mansell, it could not be more frustrating. And the Ferrari team, who had a win staring them in the face there, and they are now a lap down after a mistake from Nigel Mansell. The only positive thing they can take from this race is that Mansell and Ferrari are genuinely back, and they are at the front. But it's a big mistake from Mansell, and surely that is the last nail in the coffin of a championship assault for Nigel Mansell in 1990. But they're now focusing on 91. So they know now they've got a car that can push it to the max. And Senna's gone off! Ayrton Senna spins from the lead. I wonder if it's raining out on parts of the circuit, because Senna has now spun it from the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Now he rejoins. Has he even lost the lead? There's Nannini. Oh, I don't believe it. Ayrton Senna is the luckiest man in the Hungaroring, because he has spun from the lead of the race, but he has not lost the lead. There is Nannini a couple of seconds behind him now. But Senna gets away with it. Oh my goodness. So Ayrton Senna gets away with it as JJ Leto in the Monteverdi crawls to a halt. Gearbox failure in the Monteverdi, as JJ Leto does the best he can, but cannot finish the Grand Prix. Well, that is bitterly frustrating for Mansell even more now, because Senna, if he was going to spin off the road anyway, Mansell would have had a 20-second lead over Ayrton Senna by this point. So Gugelmin now runs in third, and Nannini and the Benetton team are screaming at Alessandro Nannini, go get Senna, he's vulnerable, he's just spun off the road, go get him. So, a big drama here at the Hungarian Grand Prix as Mansell drops it from the lead, then Senna drops it from the lead, but he manages to get back on the circuit without losing his position. Mansell not only loses the lead, but he loses a lap and drops to 13th. So Patrese gets by. It looks as though Alesi and Frentzen have just been swapping positions. There's Senna. Häkkinen in 12th position. Where are the Tyrrells? There they are. 8th and 9th, Alesi and Frentzen, as they pass the scene of one of the stricken Monteverdis. But the Tyrrells are now 8th and 9th, so they are going to put some points on the board by the look of it, with Alesi and Frentzen. It's a long race, though. You've got to remember the Hungarian Grand Prix, so even if you're out of the points at the start of the race, it doesn't mean you'll be out of it for the entirety. Frenson's going to have a go at Alesi. I wonder if this is team orders or if this is just, well, we're not in a winning position. Race each other, don't take each other out. As Frenson gets the move on teammate Alesi. So the Tyrrells are having a great battle between themselves now. As Nannini goes after Ayrton Senna, but Senna has opened up the gap again to 2 seconds. So unfortunately for Nannini, I think the Benetton team missed their chance to take the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. As Nannini gets a look at the car he'll be driving in 1991. Senna leads a thrilling Hungarian Grand Prix that still has 30 laps left in it. Gugelmin is third, a great run for him and the Leighton House team in their chrome livery with the blue insignia still present in places. But Gugelmin is in third, Larini in fourth place, and that's Boutsen slowing. That's a retirement, gearbox failure at the Williams of Thierry Boutsen. So having already had problems, I'm afraid Thierry Boutsen is not going to get to the end of this Grand Prix either. So that's 2 drivers who have led the Grand Prix at one stage and binned it, because Boutsen did lead at a very short stage of the first stints of pit stops, because he had one of the latter pit stops in the rotation. So he did lead the Grand Prix for about a lap or so. And then he went off the road and he had a gearbox failure there. Prost has had a gearbox failure. He's out of the race. And Mansell was leading, of course. And then he had a spin or a lock-up or whatever you want to call it. But Nigel Mansell, I wonder if he's still having issues with his foot after the injury that he had in Mexico. Maybe that was the issue. As he just locked up into the first corner and threw away a perfectly good race victory. So Nannini is now 3 seconds back from Ayrton Senna. Gugelmin is in third. Larini in the Ligier is still fourth, ahead of Patrese, De Cesaris, Fernandez, Frenson, Alesi and Derek Warwick. And then it's Hakkinen in 11th. Mansell in the Ferrari is 12th position now, as Larini pits in from P4 for his second pit stop. Johnny Herbert is 13th. Giovanni Alloy is now 14th, ahead of Boutsen. And then it is Damon Hill, Eric Bernard, Paul Tracy and Michele Alboreto, who is now technically 18th place. So here's Mauricio Gugelmin in the Leighton House Honda, which will become the Works Honda team for next year. They will keep the same livery, but they will become the factory Honda outfit for next year. So expect to see quite a lot more Honda stickers on the car for 1991 as they become the factory Honda outfit. As Senna goes around the outside of Tracy. He's already had 1 or 2 near misses in this Grand Prix, Senna. He doesn't want to risk another one. But he closes up on Mika Häkkinen's Brabham to lap him. There's Alessandro Nannini. So near and yet so far from taking the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Here's Damon Hill attacking Giovanni Alloy's McLaren. And he gets through, no problem at all. That should not be possible in the underpowered Dallara, but Damon Hill clearly a better driver in this situation. Oh my goodness! A proper traffic jam developing here as they're lapping one of the Dallaras. It's Johnny Herbert they're lapping. But that is Alesi and Frenson almost tripping over the Dallara as they come through. So Johnny Herbert gets out of the way, but only just in the nick of time. That could have been very scary for the Tyrrell team. Both their cars were in the points. They still are, but that was inches away from disaster. Here's Nannini battling away to pass Paul Tracy. The Lotus team still gutted that they couldn't acquire the services of Ayrton Senna to get him back to the team for 1991. They really wanted him to join the team and lead them forward, but from Senna's point of view, Williams made more sense, and with Porsche engines, he knew it was going to be a tough mission. He has no illusions about the fact that it's going to be a tough race forward for him, but he's already been a world champion. He may as well try something new, and a win here today could definitely give him a chance to become a multiple world champion. He would love to win a second world title, and a win here would definitely bring him 15 points closer to his teammate Gerhard Berger's tally. Still looking insurmountable. If he were to do that, he would have a lead of about, I think, 33 points. As into the pits comes Gugelmin on fumes. Paul Tracy's Porsche is in the same boat. So it's the third and final round of pit stops then for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Now, how many cars are going to make it to the finish of this race? Because we've got a lot of very hungry Formula 1 cars out there. In the wet conditions, these cars are drinking fuel. And Gugelmin has actually had to wait a little bit and get held up by poor Tracy coming into the pits. So here's Gugelmin in third place for his third and hopefully final pit stop. That is enough fuel to get to the end for now. And he's got the ignominy of having to wait for the Porsche to go past again as well. So we get held up by him on the way in, and Porsche pulled off a faster pit stop to get him out. So there is Ayrton Senna. Can't be too long before his next pit stop. It isn't. He's got about 4 laps or so before he needs to come in. Nannini, I'm sure, will be in a similar situation. He can go 1 lap longer, I think, than the McLaren. Though we know how thirsty these F1 cars are. Oh, that's Mansell off again. That is Mansell off yet again. He was pushing the car, trying to get further up the field. How did he do it? Let's have a look. He's gone deep into the corner. He's locked up. He's pushed too hard. Oh, Nigel. Well, he knows straight away that he's made the mistake. He's got to try and get back onto the road before Herbert and Hill go by in the Dalaras. But Nigel Mansell really has not covered himself in glory today. He's thrown away the lead, and now he's thrown away a chance to get back into the points. So Mansell, I'm afraid, well, he still wants to give Ferrari every chance they've got. If he finishes the race, he'll still score prize money for Ferrari. So from Mansell's point of view, it all counts. But it's going to be a miserable, miserable end to the race for Nigel Mansell, that is for sure. And the Ferrari team can't really believe their luck. They've already had all the bad luck in the world for 1990. They were leading the Hungarian Grand Prix, and now Mansell has gone off for the second time as Herbert gets by. And Mansell rejoins after about 30 seconds idle. And could well be lapped for a second time by Ayrton Senna, who continues to lead the Hungarian Grand Prix and is pushing like crazy now because he wants to build an advantage before Nannini's pit stop in the Benetton. Nannini's still pushing hard himself. Oh, and Senna's gone off! Senna's gone off again! Now we need to see what happened to Senna. He's run deep in the chicane, but again, has he come away with it? Let's have a look and see what he did. He's done exactly the same thing as Mansell, gone over the chicane and kept going. But he is yet again so fortunate. Now, a cunning mind might suggest, well, he's overshot the chicane there. Oh, Frenson's slowing. Frenson's slowing. Puncture. Puncture for the Tyrrell. Puncture for the Tyrrell of Heinz-Harald Frentzen. So he will not finish the Grand Prix after all. So there is no hat-trick for Heinz-Harald Frentzen, I'm afraid. And that is such a shame for the German as he retires from a Grand Prix for the first time in his short career. So Frentzen continues, but not in this race. Senna down the straight. 2 offs now, and still he holds the lead. This is Ayrton Senna at his best, but he's pushing so hard to maintain the advantage. He's got to be so careful. I was going to say, a cruel and cunning mind might suggest, well, he's gone off the road at the chicane, and technically he's cut the chicane, but he did lose time, because the gap between himself and Nannini was cut in half. So is that enough to convince someone of a challenge to that? Here's Patrese, who is now in third position in the Williams, thanks to Gugelmin's last pit stop. But Patrese has obviously got a couple of laps until his third pit stop, so Gugelmin could still find himself on the podium here. No wonder Honda have retained his services with the Leighton House Honda factory operation for 91. So Gugelmin will be in that team alongside Aguri Suzuki, I think it is, for next year. McLaren need to get this sorted quickly because Senna's coming through. He does indeed get by and laps his teammate for the second time in this race. Such is the difference between the two McLaren drivers. Senna laps Giovanni Alloy twice, and I think it's fair to say that this is probably going to be Giovanni Alloy's last Grand Prix for McLaren, if not his last Grand Prix. Because he certainly hasn't coloured himself in much glory. He got 10th place at Paul Ricard at the... he got 10th place at the British Grand Prix, but then that is one of those circuits where you put your foot down and hang on, and it's not a massive... it's not a massive challenge in terms of big dynamics of mechanical grip. It's just hanging on to it, as a few drivers have said. But Giovanni Alloy got a point that day. He's not going to get any more, that's for sure. He's 15th and 2 laps down. 14th and 2 laps down, I should say. Eric Bernard is the other man in the equation. Alboreto is up to 16th. Tracy is up to 17th, and they are only 17 cars still running this race. 9 retirements. Paul Warwick in the Porsche. Stefano Modena in the Ferrari. Nelson Piquet in the Benetton. Alain Prost in the Brabham. Eddie Cheever's Ligier. Ivan Capelli's Leighton House. JJ Leto in the Monteverdi. Thierry Boutsen in the Williams. And Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Tyrrell are all out of the race. So Jean Alesi is trying to gain as many points from this race as he can. He's in 8th place, the double Grand Prix winner this year. He is in 8th position, and that is set to give him 3 points in the Drivers' Championship if he can hold on to this. Riccardo Patrese running well in the Williams in 3rd. I wonder which team is going to snap him up for 1991. Plenty of experience. He's driven the Williams Honda package very well in 1990. Has yet to win a race in this season, but has certainly been a formidable foe for many a driver over the course of the year. So the battle continues for Riccardo Patrese as he continues to storm his way around the course. But the battle will continue for him if he can just hang on to this for the next few laps. Here's Ayrton Senna, still leading the way despite his 2 trips off the road. And Senna has actually gone fastest of all in the first sector there. So he's pushing hard in his bid to close up on Damon Hill to put a lap on the Dallara driver for the 2nd time. So Senna goes through and laps the Dallara. He's got to be careful how he does that because obviously that's a prime position to go off. In fact, he's already done it once. But Ayrton Senna showcasing his skill and his daring as Nigel Mansell gets back on the inside of Johnny Herbert to try and move up into 12th position. Can't make it happen. But from Ferrari's point of view, if Mansell can just keep going, then they could score points at Ferrari, which this year would definitely help as Larini has lost ground to Fernandez. So Mansell's going to make the move into 11th position down the straight past Johnny Herbert. But what has happened to Larini? Has he got a problem? No, it was just Fernandez getting a solid overtaking move on him. So Fernandez into P6, Larini down to 7th ahead of Alesi, Derek Warwick and Mika Hakkinen. Senna's in the pits. Senna is in the pits, I do believe. Yes, indeed. So Ayrton Senna pits in from the lead with 22 laps to go. Now, looking at how thirsty the McLaren has run today, they've only put 24 laps of fuel in the car. Now, that suggests to me that Senna might need another pit stop. He might make it a 4 pit stop strategy. As Nannini comes in next time around, I'm sure. Yes, indeed. So Nannini will be in the pits on this lap. And he sets a new personal best first sector. Senna rejoins in 3rd position, by the way, in behind Patrese. There's Patrese in front of us. As Senna rejoins in 3rd in the McLaren. But Patrese needs to pit again. In fact, I think he's doing so on this lap. Yes, he is. So Patrase's into the pits on this lap. Nannini is as well. So Senna will retake the lead, no problem. But he is looking likely to win this Hungarian Grand Prix despite the fact that he doesn't seem to have enough fuel to get to the end of the race. So he may need a splash and dash, and several teams might join suit as Derek Warwick comes into the pits in the Lotus, and that promotes several drivers forward. So Warwick is in 9th place, but in fact he has lapped Mika Hakkinen himself, I do believe. So Mansell has just unlapped himself from Derek Warwick. Where is Hakkinen on track? It's quite a long way back. He's quite a few seconds back still, as into the pits comes the race leader, Alessandro Nannini. So Nannini in the Benetton pits in, and he should get out in 2nd place, no problem, behind Senna. Meanwhile, Patrese comes into the pits as well in the Williams. Those cars are very thirsty indeed. Here's Senna coming out onto the circuit. Is Nannini going to beat him out of the pits? It's going to be close, you know. Senna comes through. Nannini comes out of the pits. Is he going to get out in front of Senna? No, not quite. So close. And Senna does beat Nannini out onto the circuit. But that was mighty close between the two cars. So Ayrton Senna retakes the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix, and surely this should stay this way. However, let's look at the fuel. We're on lap 57 of 77. That is 21 laps to go. And he's got 22 laps of fuel on board that car, as has Nannini. They're going to need to stop again. So there's going to need to be another late pit stop for these cars. They're going to need to run even further into the race. To stay competitive, they're going to need to do another pit stop. There's no way they can conserve fuel to that extent with these engines being as thirsty as they are. So they're going to need another pit stop as Alesi comes into the pits from 8th. And he should retain 9th position ahead of Derek Warwick as Mansell works his way up into 11th place now as Damon Hill pits from 13th. But Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari is 1 place away from a championship point. That's why he's still going, because there's still a chance that Ferrari could get into the points. He should be in the points, of course, but that last off he had dropped him behind Warwick and Hakkinen. So he should be in the championship points by now, Nigel Mansell. But it hasn't quite gone according to plan for the Ferrari. So there is Senna, but we think he's going to make another pit stop. 20 laps to go in this Hungarian Grand Prix. And surely he's got to come in again. Yeah, look, 21 laps left of racing. 20 laps to go. He's cutting that mighty fine. I think Senna is going to need another pit stop, as is Nannini, as I think is going to be Gugelmin. So this is going to be a 4 pit stop Hungarian Grand Prix. And for a fact of the matter, Gugelmin is on lap 58 of 77 with exactly 20 laps to go. He's got bang on 20 laps left. As Alboreto slowing, electrical problems in the arrows. So Alboreto is pulling off the road from 16th position. There was only 1 car behind him, and that's Paul Tracy. So a very disappointing and embarrassing race, essentially, for Michele Alboreto. Comes to a pretty subtle end anyway, as Mansell pits in from 11th. Herbert pits in from 12th. And there, Paul Tracy is going to move into 16th position in the Porsche by overtaking Michele Alboreto. There he goes. So Paul Tracy is now into 16th place as Mansell exits the pits again in 11th position, which is 1 place away from scoring points. So if one of the top 10 drops out, Mansell will score a point again, and it will be his first point of the 1990 season. Although, no, it won't, because, of course, he has already scored his first point of 1990. By getting pole position in the Hungarian Grand Prix, because you get a point for pole position, so he's already scored his first point in the Drivers' Championship. This is Bernard causing Nannini a bit of a headache. Nannini is 2.3 seconds back from Senna. And I think there's still going to be a big drama to come in this race, because a couple of cars are going to need to come in with a handful of laps to go. And who's to calculate how many laps of fuel they're going to need to put in to get that splash and dash guaranteed? So there could still be a few twists and turns in this Hungarian Grand Prix as Nannini runs second behind Senna. It's as controversial and as unbelievable as many of the races we've had this season already, as Alessandro Nannini looks for his second win in Formula 1 racing. The last race he won was the 1989 Japanese Grand Prix, which he won in incredibly controversial circumstances when Senna and Prost had their now infamous clash last year at Suzuka. Senna won the race on the road, but was then excluded for not respecting the rules of the racetrack, a decision that many people disagree with, as Alesi has a bit of an issue there in turn 2. Hopefully he gets it all together and keeps it going. Indeed he does, ahead of Derek Warwick and Mika Hakkinen. Interestingly, Mansell is trying to unlap himself from Derek Warwick's Lotus at the moment. So that's going to be interesting when Mansell unlaps himself. So there is your order at the moment. We have 10 retirements. And they are Alboreto, Frentzen, Boutsen, Leto, Capelli, Chiva, Alain Prost, Nelson Piquet, Stefano Modena in the Ferrari, and Paul Warwick in the Porsche. The rest of the field all still going strong. 16 of the cars still running in the Hungarian Grand Prix, and we are on lap 60 of 77. Still a long way to go. 18 laps left of this Hungarian Grand Prix. And Senna is leading. And we all know from experience in this championship, you cannot bank on a victory until your car crosses the line. Just ask Ayrton Senna. He should have had about 3 or 4 wins this year. He's been leading many of them. He led at Phoenix and then retired. He led at Interlagos and then retired. He led at Imola and then retired. Monaco, he got the job done. He was on course for the win in the Canadian Grand Prix before the engine blew on the last lap of the Canadian Grand Prix. And there goes Mansell, unlapping himself from Derek Warwick. So he unlaps himself there, no problem at all. And that's going to put Mansell onto the same lap, essentially, as Derek Warwick. So he's got a chance to get into the points if he just keeps pushing for these remaining 17 laps. As Gugelmin is trying to get away from De Cesaris and Patrese, 2 of the oldest hands at the game here. But the young Brazilian, Mauricio Gugelmin, who is confirmed as staying on at, it's currently known as Leighton House, but next year it will be known as Leighton House Honda, as the official name of the team will be Honda. Oh, that's Giovanni Aloy. A big spin for the other McLaren at exactly the same place. Now that suggests that the McLaren is actually quite vulnerable at that corner. And he spun almost completely in front of the leaders as well. So Senna and Nannini both got through. The back end of the car steps out. It's a little bit greasy there. So Giovanni Aloi is under pressure from Eric Bernard, who I think is going to make the move to overtake the McLaren. I think Bernard tried to get the move done, but it didn't work in the end. So there's Alessandro Nannini running in second place in the Benetton. A little bit held up by that spin by Giovanni Aloi. But Ayrton Senna is running a solid race here as he leads the race. He's had 2 offs, including a big spin in which his entire lead was evaporated, but yet Senna has still been able to put in a great performance here and take a solid lead now on Nannini. He's increasing the gap. It was 5.3 seconds at the last sector. As Nannini crosses the line roundabout now, it goes up to 5.5. So Senna is pulling out 0.2 of a second per sector at this moment in time. Looking pretty good to give McLaren their first win since the Monaco Grand Prix. That doesn't quite seem real to say that somehow. But that is the way the cookie crumbles at this precise moment in time. It's certainly the way things have been stacking up for McLaren of late. They've really struggled to get a win on the board. But it's been Tyrrell and Williams that have won races since that point, as Johnny Herbert gets out of the way and lets Alesi through to lap him for the second time. I wonder if Mansell's going to be quite so accommodating. So Nannini runs in second in the Benetton. They're going to have an interesting lineup next year. It might be a completely changed one because Nannini, we know, is leaving the team to go to McLaren. A great opportunity for the rising sensation, the Italian, who has a big future ahead of him, and I think he's got a good chance of winning consistent Grand Prix there in 1991. We know it's a race-winning car. Senna's currently leading in it. And that's Warwick locking up at the first corner. He just misses the gravel. Oh, Derek, that could have been a race-ending moment right there. He just about gets away with that. Oh, Derek. Very close moment there for the Lotus. He just about gets away with it, but as we mentioned earlier in the race, this is going to be a changing lineup for Lotus next year. I think they had banked on trying to back Senna's services for 91. He hasn't taken that. So they've gone in a slightly different direction for 1991. They've just announced that the team will be backed by Castrol in 1991. Now, I wonder if that's going to give them a push towards Honda engines, because we know that Castrol and Honda have a very strong relationship. But obviously, the Honda team will need 3 customers for next year, as they do tend to have in general. And obviously next year you're allowed 3 customer teams for each engine manufacturer and no more than that. So the Honda monopoly that we've seen this year from the likes of Leighton House, Tyrrell, Brabham, McLaren and Williams will be a thing of the past, as there will only be 1 works team and 3 customers for each manufacturer that's represented in Grand Prix racing from next year. And we know for a fact that there's going to be a Ferrari, there's going to be a Honda, there's going to be a BMW, there's going to be a Lamborghini, and there's going to be a Porsche engine on the grid next year. We're still waiting for the teams to confirm what engines they would like for 1991. That's going to happen in the next rotation of the drivers' market, as Nannini laps Johnny Herbert in the Converse Dallara, as Gugelmin has done the same with his teammate Damon Hill. But it looks like it could be a very solid podium for Leighton House on the weekend that they have confirmed they will be a factory Honda outfit for 1991. So Ayrton Senna leads the Hungarian Grand Prix of 1990, and McLaren are crossing everything in the hope that they can take their first win since Monaco. They obviously won the first race of the season with Gerhard Berger at the American Grand Prix at Phoenix, and they won at Monaco with Senna. But ever since then, they've been struggling to get things together again. But here at the Hungaroring, a circuit which is very similar to Phoenix and Monaco. The McLaren is definitely working well, as is the Ferrari, which up until their retirements at Phoenix and Monaco was again a prosperous race for Ferrari. So this kind of circuit suits them well. It's just a shame that Mansell made the mistake he made while leading, because he would be right up there with Senna. But Mansell is currently fighting just to get himself into a championship point at this stage of the Grand Prix. He's got to hope that somebody in the top 10 has a disastrous moment, which could happen, of course. We've still got a long way to go, and with a lot of nerves jangling about fuel loads. In fact, looking at Senna's fuel load now, he's only got 13 laps of fuel on board his car. And he's got exactly 13 laps to go. So this is going to be touch and go for Senna as to whether he can last the distance of the Grand Prix or whether he's going to need to make a splash and dash fuel stop. And Nannini, is he in the same boat? We'll have to find out. He's 6 seconds behind Senna. But yes, he's only got 12.7 of fuel in the car. They're both going to need splash and dashes before the end of the race. We could see a very dramatic final couple of laps of the Hungarian Grand Prix, as some teams will try to stretch how much fuel they've got left on board in the gamble for a decent finish. Some may pit, some may not. In the gamble and hope that they might be able to get to the end of the Grand Prix without a splash and dash. Because if they can just get the car over the line on fumes, then they could bag a podium. It's possible. Certainly if you're someone like De Cesaris, Patrese or Larini, you might want to take that gamble. I think whatever happens to Nicola Larini, he's going to have to take a third pit stop. Despite trying to make a two-stop strategy work, everybody's going to need a fourth pit stop, I think, who was on a three-stop strategy. So 12 laps to go, and Senna has 11.7 laps worth of fuel on board. There's no way he can get that to go to the finish. And that's Patrese! Patrese in the Williams goes off! A big mistake for Riccardo Patrese. And that's going to put Larini right onto his tail. Larini's going to storm by up the inside. Thank you very much. I'll take the place. Brilliant from Larini. So Larini gets into 5th place past Riccardo Patrese after the Italian makes the move on his countryman. A big mistake for the Williams. And so Patrese now needs to make a pit stop. But Larini now needs to make a stop before Patrese. Into the pits comes Gugelmin. Gugelmin's got an electrical issue from 3rd position. So Gugelmin has lost the podium. What a disaster for Leightonhouse. So the podium is gone for the team. Now they can put a decent amount of fuel on board his car. Now that could be costly for the rest of the teams because... Oh, that's Bernard. That's Bernard in the Monteverdi. So Bernard in the second Monteverdi goes off the circuit and pulls off at turn 4. But that's crucial for Gugelmin because yes, he's lost the podium, but he's made the pit stop 10 laps before everybody else, needs to make a splash and dash anyway. So Gugelmin might get this podium back again. Because I think everybody else needs to make a pit stop ahead of him. De Cesaris, Patrese, Larini, Senna and Nannini out in front certainly do. So I think Leightonhouse don't need to panic just yet. Because they might still get a chance of another crack at the podium. They might be able to go the distance. It's going to be touch and go. But this is a thrilling and spine-tingling end to the Grand Prix. 11 laps to go. Look at the fuel for Nannini. 10.5. That's not enough to get to the end of the Grand Prix. He's got to pit in again, and so has Senna. De Cesaris is now in 3rd place. He's got even less fuel on board. So he's going to have to make a splash and dash pit stop before the others. But Andrea De Cesaris' experience has put the Lotus into 3rd position. This is a great day at the office for Ryan Ferris, team boss of the Lotus squad. In what I'm told is the last race that they will appear with those camels on the car. They're going to have very different logos on the car from the next race of the championship as they move away from cigarette advertising. There are a couple of teams that are shying away from it for next season and trying to come up with another alternative. But so far, quite a few teams are still pushing their way around the course. 11 laps remaining of this thrilling Hungarian Grand Prix become 10 laps remaining with Senna 8.2 seconds ahead of Nannini and pulling further away with each lap that is counted off. There's De Cesaris in the Lotus. Still looking good with the Renault engine in that Lotus. And it wouldn't surprise me if they stuck with that for 1991. But obviously we need to wait and determine what happens. The Renault is still trying to determine which team they will want to mark a campaign with in 1991. And obviously that will all become apparent in the second round of the drivers' market, which takes place between the Hungarian and Belgian Grand Prix. So there is Senna as he works his way through. De Cesaris up on the curbs as he continues to march his way around the course. A very exciting run thus far from the Italian. And Patrese is in the pits, is he? No, Larini is in the pits. Someone is slowing. Patrese's got back past Larini, that's what it was. So Patrese has got himself back into 4th position, past the Ligier of Nicola Larini. He must have done that at turn 1. So Patrese in the Williams goes back into 4th position, and that's Paul Tracy. Paul Tracy. Oh, with Senna! With Senna! Paul Tracy and Senna have come together. What's happened there? So Paul Tracy is being lapped by Senna, and Senna's trying to come through. Senna has locked up and gone into the side of Paul Tracy and damaged the car. I can't believe it. We've got to watch again on board with Senna. Now look, the Brabham was being held up. That's Häkkinen. Tracy almost chops across on Senna, and Senna locks up and goes into the Brabham. Absolutely unbelievable. So Senna is not going to win the Hungarian Grand Prix. He's got to make a pit stop now to change his nose cone. Tracy nudges him back onto the circuit. I think Tracy has seen red there. He feels that Tracy... Senna is in 3rd gear. He's stuck in gear there. So Ayrton Senna comes into the pits for his splash and dash very early, but with a broken front wing to boot. Paul Tracy absolutely furious as he nudges Ayrton Senna back onto the racetrack to get him out of the way. Now Senna fuels up with 11 more laps of fuel, but how much time has he lost to Nannini? I think Senna's going to lose the Grand Prix here. Unbelievable. There goes De Cesaris through into 2nd, but he still needs to make a splash and dash pit stop himself. But Ayrton Senna and Paul Tracy, a complete misunderstanding, at which Paul Tracy, the Canadian, shows his rage by ramming into the back of Ayrton Senna to get him back onto the racetrack. Now, has that done any damage to the McLaren? There's Patrese. He's come out ahead of Senna. So Senna rejoins in 4th. So now neither Senna nor Mansell is leading the Grand Prix. This man is. The Italian Alessandro Nannini is leading the Hungarian Grand Prix. The man who is set to take Senna's seat at McLaren next year is leading with 8 laps remaining at the end of this one. What another thriller for the Hungarian Grand Prix. But it's not the one we thought was coming, as Senna trips over Paul Tracy's Porsche. And it's an absolutely unbelievable turn of events, as De Cesaris is now closing up on Giovanni Aloi in the McLaren to lap him for the 3rd time, I think, or the 2nd time, I should say. But what a drama. What a turn up for the books, as Andrea De Cesaris is now in 2nd in the Lotus. If anything happens to Nannini, De Cesaris could be about to take his first win in Formula 1. He's in 2nd place, 25 seconds back from Nannini. But De Cesaris needs to make a pit stop. Look, he's got 5 laps of fuel on board and 8 laps remaining. There's no way he can go the distance. Meanwhile, Nannini has got 8 laps left and 6.6 laps of fuel. He's got to come in again. Big drama in the Hungarian Grand Prix, as Senna has got back into 3rd place past Patrese. Let's look and see how he did it. Out of the final turn, Senna driving angry and makes his move on Riccardo Patrese. Could he still win the Hungarian Grand Prix? It's looking tight for Ayrton Senna. He can't afford to push too hard, because the McLaren will drink too much fuel if he does, and then he'll need to make yet another splash and dash pit stop. So it's such an awkward situation for Senna. He did not need to be tripped up by Paul Tracy at that moment. Here's De Cesaris. Now he's trying to lap the other McLaren of Giovanni Aloi, who held him up a tiny bit there, which will definitely help Senna's plight. If Senna can at least get into 2nd place, then that will save the Brazilians bacon for a 3rd time of asking in this Grand Prix. But Ayrton Senna pushing so hard to try and get himself back into a position. And what an upset, as Paul Tracy trips over the world champion of 1988, or Senna trips over Tracy, depending on your view of the accident, as Damon Hill has a little moment there in 14th place. Fair play to the Dallara team. Both of their cars are still going. Both the Monteverdis are out. One of the Porsches are out, but both of the Dallaras are still running in the Hungarian Grand Prix with 7 laps remaining. And that is great news for the team and their team boss, Emma Featherstone, the only female team principal in the paddock. As Senna runs in 3rd, ahead of the Williams of Riccardo Patrese, trying to catch Andrea De Cesaris before this race is over, while also not running out of fuel. He's got 8.3 laps of fuel on board with 7 laps to go. Ayrton Senna cannot afford to push too hard. He could still win the Grand Prix, but he's got to be so careful. Oh, that's De Cesaris! I don't believe it. Second place has gone up in smoke and flames. De Cesaris, so close to a potential victory. His best ever finish in Formula 1 in second place. Oh, and that's Giovanni Aloi that hits him. Giovanni Aloi hits him on the way through the chicane. So De Cesaris pulls off, as De Cesaris was trying to pull off the road, but the Lotus will not score a podium here in the hands of Andrea De Cesaris. Absolutely catastrophic failure for the Lotus team. What that does mean, though, is that it puts Ferrari back into the points for Nigel Mansell in 10th position, and it elevates Senna to 2nd, Patrese to 3rd, and Larini to 4th position. Oh my goodness, what an end to the Hungarian Grand Prix. And it's not over yet. We've still got drivers who are going to need a splash and dash. Look, Patrese's got 6 laps to go. And he's got 5 laps of fuel in the car. He's going to need to. Now, Senna's got 6 laps to go with 7 laps of fuel in the car. He's not guaranteed to win this one, Ayrton Senna. And of course, they've got to make sure that they finish as best as they possibly can. Now, Nannini's got 4 laps of fuel in the car, with 6 laps remaining, including this one. So Nannini's got to make a pit stop. No question of that one. But Senna is pushing. He can't afford to push. He needs to cruise. Because otherwise, he's got to come in again and lose the victory another time. Now, Giovanni Aloi gets out of the way. This is awkward. This is really awkward. I don't think Senna's going to win this because he's too far back from Nannini anyway. And if he pushes too hard, he's got to make a pit stop regardless. As Jean Alesi now runs in 7th in the Tyrrell. So that's 4 points. Another car's in trouble. It's Mansell! Oh, no! It is the Ferrari of Nigel Mansell. No points for Ferrari today, except the point from pole position. What a shame for Mansell. He was destined not to win the Hungarian Grand Prix after all. Oh, that's Alesi going off in avoidance. Alesi goes off trying to avoid the Ferrari, and that costs him 2 places. Warwick's gone through, Häkkinen's gone through. But Mansell, I'm afraid, is out of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Devastating for Ferrari. They had a chance to win this one. Mansell was leading before Mansell had his off, but still, the bad luck at Ferrari continues. At least Mansell now has a point in the Drivers' Championship for his pole position, but the Hungarian Grand Prix slips through Ferrari's fingers today. And some points have slipped out of the grasp of Alesi. That means that the Dallara of Johnny Herbert is now in the top 10. They're going to score a Constructors' Championship point. So Senna runs in 2nd. Nannini leads the race, but surely he's going to make a pit stop this time around. They're losing about 1.4 seconds of fuel per lap. Maybe even 1.5 seconds of fuel per lap. A lap and a half's worth of fuel is coming out of that car each time. So that's very dramatic. But it means now that we've got 13 cars running. We could have a couple of DNFs in the last couple of laps if drivers run out of fuel because they miscalculated. As Adrian Fernandez in the Arrows locks up in P6. You need to keep this going, mate, because there could be a very rosy finish even if you need to make a splash and dash. So Derek Warwick is 7th in the Lotus. 8th is Häkkinen's Brabham. 9th is the Tyrrell of Jean Alesi. And Johnny Herbert is now in P10 in the Dallara, 2 laps down, but he is on course for a point. Nannini is leading the Grand Prix, but surely he's got to come in at the end of this lap. Well, he's leaving it as late as possible. They're not calling him in. They want to see how far they can push the Benetton. This is dangerous. This is flirting with disaster for all of the leading teams. Patrese has 2.5 laps of fuel in the car. What about Senna? He has 4.5 laps of fuel in the car. And he's pushing hard, but he's got 4 laps to do. Ayrton Senna's got to be careful. He can't afford to push too hard too soon, or he could run out of fuel on the last lap. What a dramatic end to the Hungarian Grand Prix of 1990 as Ayrton Senna is trying to catch Nannini so that he can overtake him in the pit stops as Häkkinen becomes the first splash and dash driver. Look how little fuel he's got left. 3 laps remaining. They're going to put 6 laps of fuel in. That's so smart, because there's a good chance they'll need all of it. But it's still a long pit stop, 9.5 seconds. So a tough moment for Brabham as Hakkinen slips to ninth behind Alesi, but Alesi will surely need to do the same thing. Big drama here in the Hungarian Grand Prix, and we're getting close to the 2-hour mark here because of the damp conditions that have played havoc with this Grand Prix in various different ways. One of the most thrilling races of the season, but it's between Alessandro Nannini and Ayrton Senna as to who's going to win the Grand Prix, and Nicola Larini pits from 4th. He's got nothing left. Look at that, he's on fumes as he comes in. So Larini comes into the pits in the Ligier. This guarantees a finish for the Ligier team. And with 3 laps to go, they put 5 laps of fuel in the car. That should just be enough. 8 seconds of pit stop. And here's Nannini. They're going to have to pit him. Look how little fuel he's got. 0.2 of a lap. They're literally running him again to the dregs of the fuel tank. So Nannini comes in. So he will finish the Grand Prix. But on lap 75 of 77, with 2 laps to go, Alessandro Nannini has to come into the pits. So he brings the Benetton in, stops the car at the edge of the pit lane with no fuel left in the car. 4 laps of fuel goes in with 2 laps remaining. And is Alessandro Nannini going to be first or second in the Hungarian Grand Prix? Senna's coming through in pretty fast nick as well. There is Senna out of the final turn. He doesn't need to pit. He's got 2 laps to go. But where's Nannini? He's coming out of the pits now, but he's on the pit lane speed limit. So there is Nannini. Where is Senna? There he is. He's behind him. Nannini is behind Senna. Senna is behind Nannini. So Alessandro Nannini takes his splash and dash, and he takes back the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. So it looks as though Benetton is going to get their 2nd win of the season after the Brazilian Grand Prix when Piquet took the position. Patrese comes in for his splash and dash and hands 3rd position over to Gugelmin. But Gugelmin has got to make a pit stop himself, surely. No, because he did it earlier, didn't he? So he's got 1.9 laps of fuel left in the car, and he's going to the bitter end. Now, is Senna going to make a splash and dash? No, he's not. So Senna's going to try and get it to the end on the fumes of the fuel tank that he's got. This is coming right down to the end. Fernandez and Warwick are coming in together. They're trying to get to the end of the race on fumes, but they have not managed it. Gugelmin is trying to get to the end of the race on fumes. This is so tight. We're going to get a very dramatic end to this Grand Prix, whatever happens. Here's Nannini, and he's going to... Now, Tracy's coming into the pits. He's on fumes, so Tracy's coming in. He's only got 1 lap to do, but he still needs to finish the race. So this is so dramatic. Here's Senna. Last lap begins. 1.3 laps of fuel. I'm not sure that's going to be enough for Senna. I think he's pushed too hard. There's Alesi. He rejoins in 9th. Now, if I'm Senna, I am cruising. 2nd place is going to have to do for Ayrton Senna. But if he pushes too hard, he could lose that as well. What a dramatic end to the Hungarian Grand Prix. There's Nannini. Senna doesn't give up on a victory. So Nannini is still there, but he's got a bit more fuel in the car. So Alessandro Nannini in the Benetton is going to win the Hungarian Grand Prix, almost certainly. He's just got to bring it home now in these final few laps, these final few corners of the lap, in fact. There's Senna, and that fuel is depleting fast. He might just make it. He's got half a lap of fuel left in the car. So it's going to be touch and go for Senna, that is for sure. But what an absolutely incredible Grand Prix finish it has been here at the Hungaroring, and it's going to go right down to the finish line as Alessandro Nannini brings the Benetton into the final couple of corners, and Alessandro Nannini has held on with the Benetton. John Munro, team manager, is going to be absolutely ecstatic as out of the final turn, Alessandro Nannini wins the Hungarian Grand Prix of 1990 in front of Ayrton Senna, who runs out of fuel pretty much on the line. Absolutely amazing. Alesi comes home for 2 points in 9th. Johnny Herbert is going to bring the Dallara home. No, he's not. Is he going to cross the line? No, I don't believe he's going to lose the point. Johnny Herbert loses the point on the run to the finish line. And Gugelmin's losing 3rd. Gugelmin is losing 3rd. So Patrese going to go through and take the final place on the podium. Patrese takes 3rd away from Gugelmin. Herbert's lost the final point on the finish line as Patrese gets 3rd, Larini gets 4th. And Giovanni Aloy is going to snatch the final point of the Grand Prix away from Johnny Herbert. Unbelievable. Fernandez is going to come through for 5th place in the Arrows, ahead of Warwick and Hakkinen. Gugelmin will slump to 8th place. Damon Hill has pulled off now on the final lap. He's not going to finish the full race distance. And there's Nannini, who is cruising home. Absolutely incredible. Wow, what an astonishing race as Warwick comes home in P6. Hakkinen comes home in P7, I do believe. There's Warwick in the Lotus. He will have enough fuel to get to the end, as will Hakkinen. But Alessandro Nannini wins an unbelievably thrilling Hungarian Grand Prix. It could not have been a tougher race to win. Absolutely unprecedented. There is the result. Alessandro Nannini wins in the Benetton ahead of Senna's McLaren and Patrese Williams. Larini is 4th in the Ligier. Fernandez in the Arrows is 5th. From Warwick, Hakkinen, Gugelmin, Alesi, and Giovanni Aloy steals the final point in the McLaren as Johnny Herbert is 11th for Dallara. Damon Hill is 12th, but they lose the final championship point. Tracy is 13th, and that is the final finisher. The final official finisher is Andrea De Cesaris and Nigel Mansell, who both retired on the same lap. Bernard, Alboreto, Frentzen, Boutsen, Leto, Capelli, Chiva, Prost, PK, Modena and Warwick are all out of a thrilling race. And the fastest lap of the race went the way of Ayrton Senna by 1,000th of a second. An absolutely thrilling Hungarian Grand Prix. Scrutineering post-race is obviously going to be the next factor. So the results are provisional, subject to scrutineering. But what a thrilling Hungarian Grand Prix. And it is won by Benetton's Alessandro Nannini. Join us next time at the non-championship Birmingham Super Prix for the pre-qualifying teams in Formula 1 as an exhibition race on the Birmingham Super Prix, where I'm sure a few new drivers will get their chance to try out their cars in 1990. But what a thrilling race it has been here at the Hungaroring. Another new winner in Alessandro Nannini for Benetton. And so the plot thickens. I'm Jake Sanson. See you next time.